Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going,
Into the forest.
yes, we're going deep into the forest. We'll be exploring the world of seed collection in tropical forests.
Really fascinating stuff.
It is. And, you might think it's as simple as just, grabbing a seed and chucking it in the ground.
Oh,
But
so much more than that.
it's a lot more, especially when we start to consider the genetics involved.
Yeah.
And our guide for this journey is a book called Tropical Forest Seed by Lars Schmidt.
Excellent book.
Yeah, have you read it?
I have, yeah. It's a great resource for anyone who wants to,
Really get into it.
really understand the intricacies of seed collection and the importance of...
Yeah, and this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be diving deep into this book and really pulling out some of those key insights.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, maybe we can talk about the importance of genetic quality when it comes to seed collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ultimate goal is to get seeds that will grow into strong, healthy trees, right?
Yep.
And we often focus on the immediate health of the seed,
So that's like,
what Schmidt refers to as its physiological quality. So is it mature? Is it undamaged? Is it ready to sprout? But the real game changer lies in something we can't see, which is the genetic quality.
so it's like the difference between admiring a beautiful cake
Yeah.
and knowing that it's actually made with really good ingredients,
Exactly.
like high quality ingredients.
Yeah.
The recipe for success is kind of hidden there in the genes.
Yeah.
And Schmidt, he really lays it out there. He says that picking the wrong seed can actually set you back more than a whole breeding cycle.
It's wild. It really highlights the long-term implications of our choices here.
Yeah.
If we plant trees with, subpar genetics, we're potentially stuck with forests that are more vulnerable to disease,
Wow.
less resilient to climate change, and produce lower quality timber. And,
Right.
it's a ripple effect that impacts, the entire ecosystem
The whole thing.
and even our own livelihoods.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure then that we're selecting those genetically superior seeds? The book talks about plus trees, which are these like magnificent specimens. Schmidt actually describes this really amazing Dipterocarpus turbinatus.
Oh, yeah, I remember that description.
That looks like it should be like the poster child for a perfect tree.
Right. You'd think just grabbing seeds from the superstar trees would guarantee success, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But here's the catch. A tree's impressive stature doesn't always translate to good genes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Imagine, two seemingly identical trees standing side by side. One thrives, produces abundant seeds, resists diseases, and the other one just struggles.
Okay.
This difference could all come down to their genes.
Interesting.
One might have inherited, a predisposition for disease resistance while the other hasn't. It's a gamble we take when we only focus on a tree's outward appearance.
So even though a tree might look fantastic outwardly, its offspring might not inherit those plus genes.
Exactly.
That's surprising.
And to make things even trickier, older trees, the ones we often consider plus, they've lived through decades of environmental changes. So did they thrive because of their superior genes or simply because they lucked out with a prime spot in the forest?
That's true.
This is where the concept of heritability comes in. How much of a trait is determined by genes versus the environment?
So it's this whole hidden world beneath the surface.
Yeah.
This whole story written in the DNA of every tree. Which brings up another question. Why is genetic diversity so important? Like, isn't a forest full of trees diverse enough already?
That's a great question. Think of it this way. A genetically diverse forest is like a well-stocked toolbox equipped to handle whatever challenges come its way.
So like a changing climate
Yeah.
or, new diseases.
Exactly. With a wider range of genes, some trees will naturally possess traits that make them more resistant to drought or pests, or even, those future challenges we can't even predict yet. It's about building resilience into the forest for generations to come.
So we're equipping the forest with a survival toolkit for the future.
Exactly. And there's more to it. Genetic diversity also acts as a safeguard against inbreeding.
Oh, inbreeding.
Yeah. Think about monoculture cropping, where vast fields of genetically identical crops are highly susceptible to disease outbreaks.
Right.
In a diverse forest, however, the genetic variability acts as a buffer. Some trees may possess natural resistance, limiting the spread of the pest and protecting the overall forest health.
So it's not just about survival, it's about thriving in the face of all these challenges.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing inbreeding is a big no-no in the tree world.
Oh, yeah. Imagine a small, isolated community where everyone is closely related.
Okay.
Eventually, you start to see the consequences of that limited genetic mixing. It's the same with trees. Inbreeding leads to weaker offspring, more susceptible to disease, less likely to adapt.
So even in a seemingly lush forest, there could be this hidden threat of inbreeding lurking beneath the surface.
It's definitely something to be mindful of, especially as human activities, fragment forests and isolate tree populations. But we'll dive deeper into that in a bit.
This is making me see forests in a whole new light. It's like this intricate dance between genes and the environment, with survival and resilience hanging in the balance.
And we've only just begun to explore the complexities.
Okay, well, let's unpack this idea of site-source matching. Next, Schmidt makes it sound like finding the perfect puzzle piece for each location.
Yeah, it really is about finding the right tree for the right place. Trees, like all living things, evolved to thrive in specific conditions. And these genetically distinct populations adapted to different environments are called ecotypes.
Ecotypes.
Yeah. You wouldn't plant a cactus in a rainforest, would you?
No. It's like each ecotype has this unique set of instructions for surviving in its particular environment.
Exactly. So it's not just about finding any old seed. It's about matching the seed source to the planting site's climate, soil, and even, the other species that are present. But even experts can get this wrong sometimes.
And what happens when we don't get it right?
Well, the tree might struggle to grow. It might become more susceptible to pests and diseases, or even fail to reproduce. It's a reminder that we're dealing with complex living systems, and even small mismatches can have big consequences.
This is really making me rethink my assumptions about trees. I never realized there was so much to consider when it comes to seed collection.
And we haven't even touched on the fascinating world of inbreeding yet.
Well, let's dive into that in part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of seed collection. We were just discussing how even in a seemingly healthy forest, there can be this hidden threat of inbreeding.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. You see a lush forest and assume everything is thriving.
Right.
But beneath the surface, there could be this whole silent genetic struggle going on. Those trees might be more closely related than we realize.
You mentioned before the break that fragmentation and isolation can lead to inbreeding. Can you give me an example? Like, what does that actually look like in a real forest?
Sure. Imagine a forest where the trees are just a bit too spread out. On the surface, it looks diverse,
Yeah.
But those trees might be struggling to find genetically diverse mates. It's almost like living in a big city and still feeling lonely. You're surrounded by people,
Right.
but finding a compatible partner, it's tough.
So even though there's plenty of trees around, they might not be close enough to connect genetically? Does this happen naturally, or is it always a result of human activity?
Well, it can be both, actually.
Yeah.
Some species naturally form family groups, which can create these clusters of related individuals.
Oh, interesting.
Think about wind-dispersed species, for example.
Okay.
Their seeds often land pretty close to the parent tree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you end up with these pockets of genetically similar trees. Schmidt actually includes this really striking image in his book, Figure 2.12, I think it is,
Okay.
showing these distinct clumps of trees that are probably more related than they should be.
It's like those family reunions where everyone kind of looks the same.
Ex-
So how do we make sure then that when we're out there collecting seeds, we're not accidentally grabbing a whole bunch of, cousins?
Well, that's where understanding dispersal mechanisms comes in. For wind-dispersed species, you need to spread out your collection over a wider area, maybe 50 to 100 meters apart or something like that,
Okay.
to reduce the chances of grabbing related seeds.
So it's a bit of a genetic hide-and-seek game.
Yeah, you could say that. You're trying to find those genetically diverse individuals hidden within the forest.
What about species that rely on animals to spread their seeds?
Well, with animal-dispersed species, the seeds can be carried much farther away from the parent tree, right?
Makes sense.
Creating a more random distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So you might not need to be as stringent with your collection distances. It all comes down to understanding the biology and the ecology of each species.
I'm realizing through this deep dive just how much is going on behind the scenes in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a collection of trees.
Right.
It's this complex web of relationships and adaptations,
Right.
and even family ties.
Yeah. And there are still more layers to uncover. Remember those plantation species we talked about earlier? The timber fruit? Even some of those trendy houseplants?
Yeah, the ones that seem to be everywhere these days.
Well, here's a surprising twist. For many of those species, we actually don't know much about their original genetic makeup.
Wait, really? How is that possible?
Think about it. A lot of these species were introduced to plantations from wild collections,
Yeah.
decades ago, even centuries ago. And back then, detailed record keeping wasn't always a priority. So over time, the precise origins and the genetic diversity of those original seed sources have been lost.
So it's like having a family tree with this big question mark at the top. Do we even know where to start looking for those lost genetic roots?
That's where the quest for genetic resources comes, and Schmidt really stresses the importance of recollecting material from the original sources of these plantation species. It's like going back to the source code
Oh, okay.
to ensure we're working with a healthy and diverse foundation.
So how does that even work? How do you trace a tree's ancestry back hundreds of years?
It's a combination of historical detective work and botanical knowledge, and sometimes a bit of luck.
Wow.
Researchers might scour old records or travel to remote regions where the species is thought to have originated. They might even analyze the DNA of existing trees to try to piece together the puzzle.
It's like a botanical treasure hunt, searching for those lost genetic gems.
Exactly. And it's not just about retracing steps. It's about ensuring that we capture the full range of genetic diversity within a species. This means considering both genetic width, meaning the overall variation,
Gotcha.
and mother tree quality, making sure those seed sources are strong and healthy.
So it's about preserving the past while also ensuring a thriving future. What happens once we've located these valuable genetic resources? How do we protect and manage them?
That's where seed orchards come in.
I've heard of seed orchards, but I admit I'm a bit fuzzy on what they actually are. Are they like botanical gardens for trees?
In a way, yes. Seed orchards are specifically designed for producing high-quality seed. They act as living gene banks, where you can carefully control pollination and manage genetic diversity. You can think of them as VIP breeding programs for trees.
So instead of just hoping for the best in a natural forest, we're taking a more proactive approach
Exactly.
to ensure a steady supply of genetically diverse and healthy seeds. That's pretty amazing.
It's a crucial tool for ensuring the long-term health and resilience of our forests, our plantations, even those beloved houseplants.
Yeah.
By carefully managing genetic diversity in seed orchards, we're essentially safeguarding the future of these species.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I never realized how much goes into something as seemingly simple as seed collection. It's not just about picking seeds, it's about understanding genetics, ecology history, and even a bit of detective work.
And we haven't even discussed the biggest challenge yet, climate change.
Oh boy. I have a feeling that even with the best seed collection strategies, we can't ignore the changing world around us.
Exactly. And that's where our conversation gets even more intriguing.
Well, let's dive into that final piece of the puzzle in part 3 of our deep dive. And we're back for our final segment on seed collection. So far, we've been talking about genetic diversity, the threat of inbreeding, even rediscovering those lost genetic lines. But we left off with a big one: climate change.
Yeah, it's the big question mark, isn't it?
It really throws a wrench in the works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All those carefully laid plans for seed collection, and then climate change comes along.
It really does. I mean, think about it. The perfect seed source today might not be so perfect tomorrow, right?
Right. So everything we think we know can change.
Exactly. Those ideal growing conditions we spend so much time selecting for, they could be completely different in a few decades.
That's a scary thought.
It is. Imagine a seedling we plant today. It might be facing, oh, I don't know, unpredictable rainfall, hotter temperatures, even new pests and diseases. Things we haven't even seen yet. It's like we're designing a house for a climate that doesn't exist yet. Yeah, like, how do you even plan for that? Does this mean all our current efforts are just a waste of time? No, not at all. It just means we need to be more flexible, more adaptive. We can't just rely on past data anymore.
Right.
We have to incorporate climate projections, monitor what's happening to the environment in real time, and be ready to shift gears when we need to. It's not a static blueprint. It's more like a flexible roadmap, one that evolves as the landscape changes around us.
Okay, so it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. And it takes a village, too. Ecologists, geneticists, climate scientists, even social scientists,
Yeah.
everyone working together to develop a more holistic approach.
It shows you just how interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about tiny seeds here, but it all ties into global climate.
It really does. And we can't forget, healthy forests. They benefit us humans too. They give us clean air and water. They store carbon. They create those beautiful landscapes we all love. So taking care of the forests, it's taking care of ourselves in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, this deep dive has been amazing. It's given me a whole new appreciation for those tiny seeds and what they represent.
They really are powerful little things, aren't they?
They are. So next time I'm walking through a forest, I'll be looking at those trees differently, thinking about their genetic legacy, all the challenges they've faced, and the uncertain future they're growing towards.
Maybe this will inspire some of our listeners to get involved.
That's a great point. If you're feeling inspired to learn more, I definitely recommend picking up Lars Schmidt's book, Tropical Forest Seed. It really dives into the science of healthy forests.
And there are always ways to get hands-on, too. Look up some local tree planting initiatives in your area. You might even get to help out with seed collection or planting. Make a real difference.
That's a fantastic idea. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those trees growing strong.